Like, how can we confront the environmental issues that do in fact loom in front of us without inviting in that top-down tyrannical control?
Well, I think that's what I'm trying to do with my candidacy, is to reboot some of this so that that we can find a common ground, that people can understand that you can love the environment. The reason that I became an environmentalist, Jordan, was not because I was scared of something. Scared of the end of the world. It was because I was in love with the creeks and and climbing the trees to get a baby crow when I was a kid, and training hawks and doing whitewater kayaking, and the little streams and creeks around my home where I could go and turn over rocks and find mud puppies and salamanders and crayfish and collect them and bring them home, or seeing the tadpoles bubbling in these little mud puddles that became cauldrons in the early spring, stuff my kids will never see. The explosion of color from the butterflies when I walked into the garden that my kids will never see, because those, they're gone now. And that's why I fell in love with the environment, and it was out of love. It was not out of fear. And I think we have to bring people back to that place of love and say, what kind of world do we want to live in? Is it a world where we can hear the songbirds and where there's amphibians out in the road, but you can still see box turtles? Or is it, are we, either side is trying to make us fearful, and fear is not you never get a good response from fear. You never get, so I think we have to appeal to people through that love, through that kind of appeal. And that, my whole career has been doing that. I had a chance in 1983, when I switched careers and became a full-time, I've always been an environmentalist, but when I became a full-time environmental attorney and advocate, I was given a choice of going to Washington and working for an inside the Beltway, at a high level, doing lobbying, doing, fundraising, and doing maybe land conservation on a grand scale. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work with, communities that were living in the environment and that had been marginalized by environmentalists. My first case as an environmental lawyer was for the NAACP, blocking a waste transfer station that had been sited in the oldest black neighborhood in the Hudson Valley because they didn't have the political power. And I saw that then, and I saw that 4 out of every 5 toxic waste dumps in America was in a black neighborhood. The largest toxic waste dump in America is Emile, Alabama, which is 85% black. The highest concentration of toxic waste dumps in North America is the south side of Chicago. The most contaminated zip code in California is East LA. It was all Hispanic neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, where these obnoxious, dangerous, toxic facilities were being sited. And then I went to work for, what was my passion for most of my life, which was for fishermen on the Hudson River, commercial fishermen and recreational fishermen. Most of these people were Republicans. They're people who were environmentalists, as radical as you can get, but they didn't call themselves that because they felt estranged from the mainstream environmental community. They were people whose livelihoods, depended on a clean environment, who love the fisheries, their property values, their recreation. These are people who were never going to see Yosemite or Yellowstone National Park. For them, the environment was their backyard. It was the bathing beaches, the swimming holes, the fishing holes of the Hudson River that was there. It was Richie Garrett, who was the founder of the Hudson River Fishermen's Association, which I, joined and later turned into Riverkeeper. He used to say about the Hudson, it's our Riviera, it's our Monte Carlo. He was a combat veteran from Korea, and he was a full-time gravedigger. These were people who, who were the salt of the earth. And they should have been environmentalists, but they felt estranged from the environmental community. And I spent my livelihood with the hook and bullet people, bringing them into the environmental movement. And they came in because of love, not because of fear.
Right. So you're willing to avoid, or would like to avoid, using fear as a motivating factor when you're making your case for environmental concerns. Okay, well, that seems to be a good answer on the motivational front.
The reason that FDR said the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself, and he said that, it wasn't during World War II, it was in 1932. And he said that because the Depression had landed, in the United States and Europe. And he saw we had left-wing leaders, demagogues like Huey Long, that a third of the country wanted to turn, essentially socialist or communist. We had a right wing, like Father Charles Coughlin, who wanted to bring the nation fascist. The people had lost faith in democracy. It was 1 out of every 4 Americans was unemployed. 2,200 banks had closed. It was crashing, and everybody was convinced that democracy and capitalism had failed. We had to look for a new system. In Europe, Roosevelt saw the same depression. The reaction in Germany and Spain and Italy was that right-wing tyrants were using fear to engineer a shift to the far right and to fascism. And in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, left-wing tyrants were doing the same thing, but to shift the population towards communism. And that's why he said to the American people, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We can right this, we can change it, we can recover what we had, but we just have to stay out of fear, because that is the weapon of tyrants.